Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Fave Yogis. Do you teach privately? Make payment and registration a breeze. Use the Fave Yogis app to create and manage classes for your personal clients. Life is just easier with autopay. You can forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're up in Canada, sending an invoice, an e-transfer, or PayPal, depending on where your clients are in the world. With Fave Yogis, you can use autopay to enable repeating payments. This will save you so much time and make things so much easier. You can also keep your calendars in sync. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teacher and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers and students stay connected. Head on over to the App Store and find Fave Yogis, F-A-V-Y-O-G-I-S. Use code MBOM and let them know that I sent you. This episode is also brought to you in part by Ana Luisa. Ana Luisa is a jewelry company, and I know what you must be thinking. What on earth does jewelry have to do with yoga business? I had the same thing when they first connected with me, and then I got to know the brand, I got to know the people, and I got to know the jewelry that they make. And I started thinking about how, as a yoga teacher, I really haven't treated myself to anything nice over the last couple of years. I've been so focused on the hustle of my business, bringing money in, that I haven't even been thinking about self-care in the form of the jewelry that I wear. One of the reasons that I really love Ana Luisa is that they make jewelry that's recycled gold. I don't know if you knew, but it actually takes 20 tons of earth mining to produce a single ring of gold. And with Ana Luisa, they use 100% recycled gold in their products. This is a huge win for me. On top of that, a lot of jewelry that we buy ends up being cheap, breakable, and it's rarely recycled. It's a huge waste for the environment. Ana Luisa's products come from the same jewelers as Tiffany's and Louis Vuitton, and they are very confident in their quality. And after trying their products, I can feel the exact same way about it. But the great thing is that it doesn't come with the big price tag. For the first time in years, I'm treating myself to jewelry that is high quality, great for the environment, and it looks good. They have stuff that is everything from daily wear to stuff you could wear to a wedding or a big event. And for me, that's the perfect fit with jewelry. So if you have been like me and you haven't really been splurging on anything because you're hustling in your business too, but you really want to give yourself maybe a little bit of love through the form of jewelry, something that's affordable, good for the environment, and is going to last a long time, head on over to analuisa.com/MBOM. It's ANALUISA.com/MBOM, and they've got a little discount for you over there. And as always, thank you so much to the sponsors of this episode for supporting the show, and I hope that you guys can go support them in return. Now, on to today's episode of the podcast. I am so excited to be joined by Ron Medlin from Rebel of Growth Marketing. You might be recognizing Ron's name, and that's because him and his company have been supporting the podcast for a number of months now. Ron and I started talking a couple months ago, and we connected over our desire to help yoga teachers and help yoga studios get more clients in the door. We started talking about different tactics that can be used, and he was sharing with me all the things that he's created in his business to help yoga teachers. After a couple of months of hearing all about it through the podcast sponsorships and being able to hear that with you, we decided it was time to get him on the podcast to talk more about it. So on this episode of the show, we talk a little bit about Ron's background, how he got into marketing, why he works with yoga teachers and yoga studios, and then we talk about the formula that he's created. We talk about what that is and how it works for yoga studios. His big thing is looking at how we can get more people in the door and how we can keep them there. And this is so important because as studio owners, we are busting our asses working all types of crazy hours and not making enough money. So if you are a yoga teacher or a yoga studio owner that has been busting their butt to get clients through the door, I think that you'll really love this episode of the podcast. So without further ado, here is Ron. Ron, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited as well.
Yeah. And so, we've been connected for quite a while now, and you've also been sponsoring the podcast for a while, which has been really, really awesome. So, to start out with, can you just tell me a bit about yourself and your business and kind of what you're passionate about?
Sure. So my name is Ron Medlin. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I run an agency called Revel of Growth. And what we do is we specifically help yoga studios grow their membership. So that's all we're focused on, 100%. So I'm really passionate about that. I love, talking to some of our clients and where we've actually just changed their businesses, and it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how did you first get into marketing? Like where did your idea for your business come from?
Well, should I go all the way back or just
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah,
Okay.
tell me the whole story.
Well, believe it or not, I did not graduate college with a marketing degree. I was a biology major, planning on being a doctor or a dentist or something like that, and didn't even do that. So right after college, I started day trading stocks for 10 years, and that was awesome, great experience. But then, the 2008 hit and just got a little bit more difficult to make money trading. So then I started kind of self-taught myself marketing like SEO and paid search and some different tactics like that. Built an agency back then where I was helping a lot of local businesses with those things. And back in the day, there were certain tactics that everybody was using as far as SEO that kind of worked, but Google didn't like them so much. So Google changed their algorithm. I lost a lot of my clients, yada, yada, yada. I owned another agency where we were kind of focused on content marketing. And I don't know if you're familiar with HubSpot,
Yeah.
their inbound marketing methodology. And then ended up taking a position as a director of digital marketing at one of the fastest growing PR firms here in Atlanta. That was my first job, and I didn't love it. So a couple of years later, I just decided to leave, and that's when I started working on my own agency again. And honestly, kind of just fell into working with yoga studios. I had a friend, a childhood friend that owned a yoga studio, was managing a yoga studio, started working with them and built a system that really just works every single time. I'm not, I'm not tooting my own horn or everything, but we have yet to have anybody that hasn't seen success from this system.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really cool to hear that you self-taught all of that. And as somebody who has a marketing degree, like business background marketing degree, it's like, look, I didn't learn digital marketing in school at all. It's like we learned like print media and magazines and direct mail and all that sort of thing because like I graduated in 2011. So it was like
Yeah.
before the age of Facebook as a business and before Instagram really blew up.
Well, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm older than that. And we certainly didn't have it. So I grew up or, kind of cut my teeth learning from, all the big internet marketing gurus out there. I don't know if you know people like Ryan Dice and Frank Kern and all these different people, but I really spent what a college tuition would cost learning all this stuff. So, I think that was the only way to learn all this stuff back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're finally having, some digital marketing degrees and stuff through places like Full Sail and stuff like that. So
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. And so what kind of inspired you to want to help yoga teachers, yoga studios, and gyms with their marketing? Because obviously there's a lot of different niches that you could have dove into. What was it about that one that kind of drew you in?
yeah, so I mean, I've always been into fitness, but if I'm just totally transparent, it just kind of fell in my lap. And I had some friends that had worked with studios, and that's kind of part of the way that I learned some of my system. I kind of pieced together what a lot of other my friends were doing and seeing success with, and I brought it to yoga studios. Most of my other friends that were doing that were working with like boutique fitness and things like that, and I just wanted to niche down and So that's kind of where the yoga studios came in. But it works with a lot of different types of fitness studios. It works with chiropractors, dentists, all those kind of things. It's very similar strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I always find it kind of interesting, like just what industries sort of stand out as like needing what type of marketing. Looking at your system, was it like once you started learning about yoga teachers, yoga studios, gyms, was there anything you had to tweak with the system that you'd created?
I think one of the biggest thing is the sales process that I coach people on. So our system is built to bring people in the door, and then it's really up to the studio at that point to sell the membership, get people to purchase. And so a lot of, as you probably know, a lot of studios sometimes have issues selling just because their mindset and things like that. And so I coach them on a specific process for selling in their memberships. And we can get into that, if you want. But I think that's the biggest difference is the sales process that I coach.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, let's definitely dive into that because I'm sure people listening are curious like what that's all about. So can you kind of walk me through what that sales process looks like?
Yeah, so are you familiar, and I'll explain it, but what we call a value ladder. And a value ladder is essentially where you get people to take a small step with your company, your business. And then if they get value from that, they're willing to spend more money. So the way our yoga studio value ladder works is we get people in the door using an offer, typically something like a 5 to 7 day unlimited pass. And so that gets people in the door because like when you're running like Facebook ads, or you're making some kind of offer, it's a lot easier to bring somebody in your door and give them a great experience and then sell them than to try to sell them on a platform where you're not actually talking to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we get people in the door, and then on the first day, the yoga studio will present them with an offer. And this is an unpublished offer. They can't find it anywhere else. It's better than any offer they have on their website, any promotional offer that they're promoting out there. But the only way the person can purchase it is if they purchase that day one. So the offer, we call it a quick decision pricing. So they make that offer on day one, and then if they don't purchase it, they just have to revert back to whatever the published offer is on the website. And then the idea is after that offer, it could be, say, 3 weeks for $30. And so during that 3 weeks, the goal is to get that person to come into the studio at least 3 times. And so that comes from, I think there's a stat out there posted online that if you can get people into your studio during the first initial period 3 times, they're more likely to become a member. There's actually a pretty, the guy, Restaurant Boss guy, I think his name is. I mean, it's not his name, but the show.
Yeah. What is that guy's name?
I really don't know.
Totally blanking on what his name is. I know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah, so he coaches something similar to restaurants. So the idea for a restaurant is to get people to come in at least 3 times, and if they do that, they're more likely to become longtime patrons of your restaurant. So he coaches restaurants. It's called the red napkin strategy or something. I think that's what it's called. And so when somebody comes in for the first time, they get a red napkin in front of them. And that tells the rest of the staff that they need to go all out for this person. And it also tells the manager at the time to come in and offer them something the first time they come into the studio. So it's just about, and then the next time they come in, so maybe the first time is, hey, come back and here's a coupon for a free dessert. That gets them back in the door the second time. And then, hey, I'm glad you like the dessert. Come back in for some free appetizers. Here's your coupon. So we're just trying to drive those people back into the studio at least 3 times during that initial period. And I learn a lot from some of the bigger studios that I work with. Some of them have like customer experience managers. So their whole job is to just basically have, set up times for the set up the classes for the person to get them in the door, make sure everything's going good for the student. Really just kind of making sure that they're having a great experience, they're becoming part of the community, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And so if you sell somebody on like say a 1 week or a 1 month pass, then the idea is to get them in the door more than just that one time.
Exactly. So if they purchase something and they're not coming in and using it, more than likely they're not going to take the next step in your value ladder. Right.
And then after you get them in the door, then what is your next offering? Like, is it a discount on a pass? Is it?
So the initial is, so the offers that we put out on like Facebook or through our text messaging campaigns is typically a 5 to 7 day free pass. So it's free. Then on the first day, they're presented with a offer, typically something like 3 weeks for $30, because then at the end of the free week and then the end of the 3 weeks, they've been in your studio, for basically a month. And that's just like your promotional offer. Probably a lot of our studios have something like, a month for $39 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically the same idea. You're getting them into your studio via the free offer. You're getting them into the studio more often with your upsell offer on the first day. And then you try to sell them into the membership.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. And so there's no additional like discount on the membership in this sales strategy.
Some people do. Some people will discount the first month if they get on an auto draft, which I think is a good idea because it's just another small step in the value ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we do at the studio that I work for as a manager is we do 15% off for the first 3 months if they go on the auto renew.
That's great. See, that I just learned something from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty effective. And I think one of the important things about this, which you can probably touch more on, is like knowing your audience and your clientele. And I feel like that I live in a tourist town. So, getting people who are like locals to come and sign up is like something that the studio owner is really trying to incentivize, like really trying to get people, who are going to be there long term to actually like be at the studio. So we only do our like initial incentive membership for like our 1 month intro is only for locals. We don't do one for tourists.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember going to Austin and I went to a yoga studio there and they did that. And I was like, are you sure I can't get this? Because I was like there for a week, right? So it like would have been
Which one? I have a location in Austin.
Wanderlust?
Don't know that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's like right sort of downtown. It was near where I was staying. So it was the one that I went to. But yeah, I was like, oh, it's too bad I can't get this. But I do think it makes sense from a studio perspective to have that for locals as opposed to just like tourists passing through.
Yeah. And then another thing we kind of coach on is having a pricing presentation. So not just sending them to, because you probably know this, but a lot of studios just have way too many price options, in my opinion. It can be super overwhelming. So we kind of coach people on having a couple of different memberships and then maybe a class pass and then a drop-in.
Mm-hmm.
Because giving a lot of options, while it seems like a great idea, really, I believe, overwhelms the person trying to choose.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of gives like decision fatigue a little bit.
Yep, exactly.
I think too, it's also really easy like to be like, oh, well, maybe I'll get like, I don't know, the 20 punch card because that's the best value for me right now. Or like maybe I'll get the 1 month membership because I don't know if I'm going to be here like longer term. It's like people can make decisions based on being in that moment. As opposed to like making decisions that might be best kind of in terms of like, I feel like this kind of sounds bad, but in terms of like getting them to come back. And it's not like it's like you're trying to trick them to come back, but it's like knowing what is going to be best for both the studio and for the consumer, I guess.
Right. And I come from perspective that's doesn't have the mindset of, you know, all this worry about, money. So I can give some of my studio owners some tough love when it comes to that, because, they're offering a great service that's helping people. So it's beneficial to both you, like you just said, the business owner, and the person that you're trying to get back in the studio. So, to look at it that way, I think is self-defeating more than helpful to both parties.
Right. Yeah. Tell me more about this money side of things. Like, do you mean that you don't like struggle with the idea of asking money for your services?
Absolutely not. I know that I can help. And so, and I've heard it plenty of times, like, you're actually being selfish by not asking for, not charging for your services, because then you put a value to it, and if you can really help as many people as you think you can, and you believe that, then it's very selfish for you not to promote and sell your services, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting. I actually just did a podcast interview with somebody who works dealing with like grief. That was my interview before we hopped on this call. And so I asked her that, because it's like she considers herself a healer and she's very spiritual, and she, this is her calling, is what she's doing. And I was like, how do you charge like a fair wage for this? And she's like, if I don't charge money for this, I can't keep doing it. And I feel like that's like the bottom line, is that like, we would never ask our hairdresser or accountant to do something for free. I would never call you up and be like, hey, can you do my marketing for free? So like, why on earth should you like teach for free?
Yeah. And that's a great point. You can't do it if you're not, getting enough to survive on, you've got to, so I like that. I like that. How she put that, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever have to kind of do a bit more of a sell when you're working with yoga teachers and yoga studios, because there is kind of this mentality? Like, is it harder to sell a service that you're offering because of this kind of like money problem?
I think sometimes it's hard. Well, I'll give you an example. This just blew my mind, actually. So I had a prospect I was talking to about growing their studio. They were stagnant in their growth, and they were working 16 hours a day. They were just worn out all the time. And then I told them what the price was, and they're like, "Oh, I can't do that. I've already committed to buying a gong." And I was like, "What?" Well, you're buying a gong? I'm sorry, it just blew my mind a little bit. I was like, you're working 16 hours a day, right? And you want to get away from that, and you want your studio to grow, but you're going to put that investment towards a gong instead of hiring somebody to help you. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think I guess I appreciate the honesty, because I feel like more often than not, people just say like, I can't afford it, or I'm too broke, or I'm too poor. And for me, one of my big shifts with my own personal relationship with money has been taking that verbiage out of it. Like, yes, of course, I don't have money for many things. I can't just go put a down payment on a house. I can't afford to buy a Tesla. But when it comes to like a service or a product, I try not to say like, I can't afford it. I try to take ownership over like, I'm choosing not to invest in that right now. Because
Right.
we find money for the things that we really value.
True.
Like
Yep.
the gong.
Yeah. I was just like, to me though, if you're trying to get out of that, just overwhelmed, and so many studios I talk to are going through the same thing, just working like 16 to 18 hours. And I really want to help them. I want to take that off their plate. And I just don't, when somebody chooses to buy a gong instead of like not working so hard and then making the money to buy the gong down the line, it's just, sometimes it's hard for me to
Understand.
sympathize, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely understand that. And so, so for people out there who are listening, I'm sure there's somebody who's like, I'd rather have a gong than pay for marketing services. Like, what is it why is it good to invest in marketing? I guess is the big question. Why is it good to invest in these types of things for our businesses?
Well, you need people coming through the door to stay open, right? You need revenue. And so you need more people knowing about what you're offering. And so the only way to really do that is through marketing. And there's lots of ways to market a business. But when I think about like different strategies that I could use, because there's obviously a ton, and studio owners have to kind of vet all those different ideas and spend their times in the right, prioritize those different marketing strategies. So what I like to do is I just ask two questions, basically. It's, will this strategy bring people into my door today? And then the other question is, will this strategy bring a high volume of people into my studio? And so everything that, writing a blog, posting on social media every day, Google ads, writing a newsletter, if you have to prioritize all these different things, I ask those two questions to see which ones I need to spend my time on first, right? I'm not saying that like blogging or posting on social media all the time or running Google ads is not great, but if I have to prioritize, I want to make sure that it's going to bring me members today and it can bring me a high volume. And for those, it's kind of my system, in my opinion. It's Facebook ads and text message marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. And so when it comes to marketing, what are some things that yoga studios are currently doing well from what you've seen in your work?
So a lot of the studios, so it's really interesting. I have a really big studio in Seattle and they're doing really, really well. And I kind of asked them how they got there, and it basically, they've done well on like things like ClassPass and Groupon. I think a lot of studios actually get some business from those because you're getting in front of people that you regularly wouldn't. So I think those are good strategies if they're not taking away from something else. I think that, and also from just learning about the yoga studio industry, a lot of the studios do most of their revenue on retreats and teacher training. So I think a lot of those do really well with those. Outside of that, I think they're doing all the other things that people tell them to do. And while they're great, do they pass those two questions? Really, is what I would ask.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then what are some of the things that studios like maybe aren't doing so well or could definitely improve upon?
I think the biggest thing I see is when they're running ads, they're kind of not doing it right. I mean, you probably see this all the time. I definitely see it when I see an ad from not just yoga studios, fitness studios in general. A lot of times they'll do a Facebook ad and they'll have, they don't have any way to capture any information. It's just like, here's the offer, give us a call or go to our homepage of our website. So the first thing is they really need to be capturing contact information, name, email, phone number. And that kind of leads into the second thing I see a lot of people doing wrong is, they're capturing the information if they're savvy enough, but then the follow-up is kind of struggling. So I think there's a stat somewhere out there that says if you don't follow up with someone in the first 5 minutes, they're 300% less likely to buy from you. So first of all, they're not following up quickly enough. A lot of studio owners are, they follow up when they get a time, a break from their classes, or maybe even, wait a day or two later. So first of all, it needs to be immediate. And then secondly, it needs to be on a channel where people are less likely to ignore it. So you probably know that email is, I think, a high email or what considered a good email open rate is like 20%. So only 20% of the people that signed up for your offer are opening and seeing the follow-up. So if you look at text message marketing, I think the open rate is over 95%. So you can see that by following up on immediately and following up on a channel where people prefer to communicate, you're getting in front of those people a lot better, and you've got a lot higher chance to get a response from them.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that all definitely makes sense. Like, I think I can relate to this idea of, I get something in my head like, oh, I want to do like this workshop or this private session or something, or try something new. And it feels kind of scary. And I make the hurdle of like taking that first move to purchase. And then maybe I can't purchase online. So I call, nobody answers. Then I email. And it's like, if I don't hear back for 2 days, maybe it's kind of like I've gone back to like, oh no, this isn't actually a good idea. I don't want to do it anymore type thing. I definitely like understand messenger marketing and text marketing, which we can definitely dive into a little bit more. In terms of emails, like if somebody's emailing your yoga studio, is having an autoresponder enough to kind of keep them in there, or how do we sort of manage that so that we're getting back to them as quick as possible? Hey yogis, we're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Offering Tree. Most wellness professionals struggle with creating a website and a digital presence. So Offering Tree created easy-to-use software that guides yoga teachers through the process in about 30 minutes. That's right. You can have a beautiful mobile responsive website in 30 minutes. Offering Tree's website tools allow teachers to put their class schedules on their own branded website and allows their students to book classes and even pay online. It also supports one-on-one appointment booking. Your Offering Tree website will have a whole host of other tools to help you be a successful teacher, like newsletter and a blog, website traffic analytics, search engine optimization, client communication tools, and more. Offering Tree really does make it simple to have a website and takes care of the tech side of teaching. So if you've been putting off creating a website because you think it will be a headache, you should really give them a try. To get started on your website, go to offeringtree.com/MBOM and receive 50% off your first 3 months. One of the things that I really loved about Offering Tree when I first signed up was how pleasantly surprised I was at really how easy it was. I've been using WordPress for years and I'm a big fan of WordPress. And I always say that once you get over that hump of understanding any type of software or technology, it becomes really easy. With Offering Tree, there is no hump to get over. It's just very, very simple. I had a website that looked really professional in less than 30 minutes. Again, check out offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive 50% off your first 3 months and create your new website today. All right, back to the podcast episode.
So I'll just talk about Facebook ads because that's kind of where we kind of focus. So with Facebook ads, you can, depending on how you're running them, and that there's different objectives, and I don't want this to get too high level. But so we run Facebook lead ads, and if your audience is not familiar with Facebook lead ads, essentially that's where everything is self-contained on the Facebook platform. So someone sees an ad, they push the call to action button to receive the offer. A form inside Facebook pops up, and it's pre-populated with all the person's information that they signed up with on Facebook. And then all they have to do to submit that information is push another button. And so it's all self-contained into Facebook. And then we have our own piece of texting software that where all that information automatically goes into that. And it also has an email autoresponder in our platforms. So all the data from the person is pushed into that tool, and then we can follow up. And so same thing, you can hook your lead ads up to any email autoresponder. But, I do think to a certain point that autoresponder in that context is the best way to follow up. But then if someone responds, I think a real person has to jump in at that point. And then so that's part of what we do with the text message marketing. We have auto follow up via text and email. And then when the person responds, we're on the back end having real conversations with them, scheduling them in to come to the studio. So yeah, I think that autoresponders have a certain purpose, but then at some point a real person needs to jump in and, have a conversation.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that human connection is really important. And especially in a space like yoga where somebody maybe feels nervous or uncomfortable. And it is kind of like like, I feel super comfortable in yoga studios, but I definitely remember the time where I was like, where do I put my mat? And where's the teacher going to be? And do I talk to anyone? And like, what's this whole thing about? So I think it's really nice to have that human connection before people go in so that they really understand like what's going on.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. We've gotten into some deep conversations on our text back and forth. It's pretty, people just kind of bearing their souls and us kind of calming them down and saying, come on in and try it out. And, we have plenty of beginner classes, and a lot of people that come through our ads or, our text messaging campaigns are beginners. And so they are nervous, just like you're talking about. And so having that personal touch on the back end, especially via text, I mean, email seems like it's a little bit colder just because there's a time gap between you responding, them responding. But when it's text messages, much more real time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so text message marketing is something that I haven't personally used very much. Can you tell me a bit more about like how that works and what that's sort of like, how you get set up with that, et cetera?
So basically we have a couple, like our system is comprised of two different strategies. One is what we call database reactivation. That's basically taking your old database that's just sitting there that maybe you've been sending an email newsletter to, but you haven't gotten engagement from them in a while. They haven't been in your studio in a while. And so we just send a single text that has an offer. They can opt out if they don't want to receive the offer. If they do want to receive the offer, they just basically text a keyword in, and then that tells us if they're interested in. And that's where our auto follow-up sequence starts. And that is just based, it's basically just to get them to schedule a class. And so that's how that works. So it's a single text, and then if they opt in, we follow up with them. If they tell us to, don't text us anymore, take us off the list, we just mark them as do not disturb, and they're never contacted again. And then, like I was saying earlier on the Facebook ads, so depending on, what objective we use in our Facebook ads, sometimes we use lead ads. We also drive people to landing pages sometimes. And so whichever strategy we choose, we make sure that the forms that people fill out are integrated into our text messaging platform so that the follow-up is instant. So all that data is right after they finish filling out a form is pushed into our platform, and then that triggers an automated response back to the person.
Okay, that's cool. So I think I've been on the receiving end of this. Is this pretty popular? And do you know if this is pretty popular, like with political campaigns?
Yes, I definitely have seen it in our local area during the Georgia elections. So I'm in Atlanta, so I definitely received some of that during the Georgia elections recently.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was my boyfriend used to work for a company in Charleston, South Carolina. So we were down there in the fall for a little bit. So I had a local number, and I kept getting like Planned Parenthood stuff. And I was like, I didn't sign up for this. And then it was funny because I reactivated my Canadian phone number, and then we were just about to have a provincial election at that point, and I was like getting all of that stuff too. And so I was just kind of interested. I was like, oh, this is something that I never used to get in the past. So it's obviously become more of a popular marketing strategy. And I mean, I guess.
And we don't randomly text numbers that, we don't buy lists or anything like this. These are people that have previously, purchased or come into the studio at some point. So, they're familiar with the brand, or they've come through a Facebook ad, and we let them know that they will receive text. So,
Right. So you're not like spamming people maybe the way the provincial government / Planned Parenthood was spamming me a little bit. I was able to just write I think it was stop or unsubscribe or something. So I wasn't like too annoyed with it. I was kind of just fascinated by it since it was sort of like a new thing that I was experiencing.
Yeah. And we only send a single text. It's a good offer that people, if they're interested in yoga, they would at least be, I think, interested in receiving something like that.
Right. And so what's the process for actually setting that up? Like, do you guys use a software or how do you actually go
Yeah,
about
so we have our own piece of software. There are some campaigns and things that need to be set up. But we do, when someone works with us, we set all that stuff up for it and we manage all of it. I'm actually creating a course soon, and part of that will be coaching people on how to build out those campaigns, but that's coming down the line. But yeah, it takes a little bit of setup after you purchase the tool, but it's not too bad.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Are there any kind of, in the meantime, while your course is not out, are there any resources that you can point people towards if they're looking towards maybe researching more, getting something like this set up, or is the best thing to just kind of like schedule a call with you?
So you can do two things. So I will be running a challenge in July. And people can sign up for that challenge by going to rebelofgrowth.com/challenge. And then if they're interested in potentially working with us, they could just go to rebelofgrowth.com, and there's a button on there that says, see if this will work for your studio. And from there, you just fill out a questionnaire, and then we can schedule a call, and we can tell you whether it's a good fit for you or not.
Okay, awesome. Sweet. I'll make sure that there are links for that in the show notes and all that good stuff.
And then also, I have some educational videos on my Facebook page, Rebel of Growth.
Okay, awesome. That's great. And so something you said a little earlier on is that Facebook ads are something that people often do incorrectly. And I feel like it was the type of thing before I actually started working with somebody like yourself who worked in Facebook ads and really understood the ins and outs of them. I feel like I definitely fit in that category too. I would just occasionally boost a post or shove some money at something that I wanted people to see more of. And it actually took paying somebody and sitting down and learning about it before I was like, okay, I was doing all of this entirely wrong. So
yeah, and I don't blame the studios for that at all. That's not their job. So
yeah, for sure. And I'm definitely, if learning Facebook ads is not your thing, which it was not my thing, I definitely feel like it's very beneficial to hire somebody. But I'm curious, what are some of your top tips for running Facebook ads effectively, or best practices for Facebook ads?
So I guess I'll kind of go back to why Facebook ads. So there's really, basically two behemoths when it comes to a B2C advertising, at least. I'm sure you can guess what those are. You got Facebook and Google, right?
Yeah.
And then why we don't choose Google, and not that Google's bad for yoga studios, but if you go back to those two questions we talked about earlier, will it bring us leads or people into the studio today? The answer for Google ads is yes. But the second question is where Google ads, in my opinion, fails for yoga studios. Because if you think about it, the people that are going to come into your yoga studio are probably 3 to 5 miles around you, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in a rural area more than that. But if you think about with Google, it's all around search. So at least Google search ads, which is where most people would probably go. Somebody within the 3 to 5 mile radius has to be looking for yoga studio, right? And then they have to click on your ad, which I think people that click on an ad is 2.5%, 5%, maybe at a high level. So 5% of the people that are searching, that is a small amount of people searching in that small area, are going to see your ad, click on it, and maybe come to your studio. So I just think it fails will it send a high volume of people into my studio? Now with Facebook, you're getting in front of everyone that's on Facebook within that 30-mile radius, right? Mm-hmm. Or not 30 mile, but 3 to 5 mile radius, and you're putting your offer in front of them. Now, if you've got a really good offer, you might convince people that haven't even thought about going to a yoga studio to try it out. And so to me, Facebook is the very best place to advertise for a fitness, yoga studio, Pilates studio, any of those things. So that's why I choose Facebook. As far as best practice, and when I say Facebook, the Facebook ad platform covers Instagram as well. So I'm using those kind of interchangeably. But when it comes to Facebook ads, best practices, we like to use lead ads because, like I was telling you before, everything is self-contained in the Facebook platform. And I don't know if you knew this, but Facebook never wants you to leave their platform. So,
I've heard.
yeah. So if you can keep everything on Facebook, they're going to give that preference. So when you run lead ads, you can generate leads at a much lower cost. We're seeing leads at like $2, which is really, really good. And then about 50% of those people are actually coming in the studio. So you're spending, $5 to get somebody into your studio. And so we do lead ads. They're pretty easy to set up, but just make sure that with the lead ads, you're integrating that into whatever follow-up system you're going to use so that you can follow up with people instantly. And it's a lot of technical stuff. And that's why, that's probably a barrier for a lot of studios because, like I said, that's not their bread and butter. It's not what they do. So that's a lot of, I think where the issue comes in is they just don't know how to do it. And there's a learning curve. And that's kind of where we come in. And I want to be able to help studios that can't necessarily hire us. That's why I'm creating the course so they can have another outlet to learn this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting because it's like, business is very, very necessary when you're running a studio. A studio is a business, but I think that there's so many front end things when it comes to running a yoga studio that it's so easy for those back end things to slip aside, or it's even like maybe you finally get that Facebook ad running and then you're not like monitoring it, which is another huge part of it. Because I think like studio owners specifically are so focused on like getting people through the door that they don't think about how there needs to be like a whole cycle with it. Like this marketing aspect is such a key piece to the cycle, yet it's like when you're busy, you're just working entirely in the front end kind of customer service and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about before. It's like I've talked to so many studio owners that are just working, 16 to 18-hour days, and they're doing everything. They're doing the accounting, they're doing the marketing, they're doing the sales, they're doing the class. They're teaching classes, they're managing their teachers. So it's hard to do all that stuff. And especially if you're trying to do some things that you're not necessarily skilled at or haven't learned to be skilled at. It's hard to make those things a priority because, it's just, you don't really know how to do them. So you kind of put those things off, put them on the back burner, like you said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think it's great that you've got this course coming out as well so that it's like a bit more of an affordable option too if people don't have the finances to work with you one-on-one or work with your team one-on-one. So I think that that's really awesome. Do you have any tips for like writing great copy when it comes to Facebook ads, or I guess just for any of your marketing in general? Like, I think that there's sort of this challenge between using things that are going to be catchy and get people through the door, but then there's also like the authenticity aspect of it because people are like, I don't want to just say something that sounds really cheesy that doesn't resonate with my brand. Like, how do you find that balance between writing like edgy copy that's going to catch somebody's eye, but then also keeping it authentic to the business?
Well, fortunately for kind of our system, we've created a piece of copy that works, pretty much every time we roll it out to a new studio. But, it took some testing and everything like that. But, I think we use a lot of emojis, which might be cheesy, but it works for us. As far as like just copy in general, though, I think getting to know your audience and segmenting your audience into different people, because you've got a studio probably has, I don't know, 3 personas in a studio, definitely just 2 that off the top of my head. So you've got your kind of your younger crowd that's more into the fitness aspect of it and looking good and all that kind of stuff. And then you got your older crowd which I think a lot of my studios tend to sway towards, actually, where they're just trying to kind of stay active and do something. So I think really talking to your clientele, seeing what their challenges are, surveying them, both when they first come in the door and then when they leave, and then just really understanding their biggest challenges. There's a great book by a guy named Ryan Levesque. I don't know if you've heard of him. I think it's called Ask, or the Ask Method. I'm not sure, but it talks about surveying your audience. And so this guy, basically what he does is he goes into these new niches, and he asks one big question. It's like, what is your biggest challenge around whatever that is? And so they'll answer that question, and he'll start seeing trends in the way people answer that question. And so from there, he can pull out like keywords and things like that. And he might get a few different answers that pop up over and over again. And so from there, he understands the different challenges that these people are having. And then he knows kind of the wording around how they talk about those challenges. So I think using what their challenges they're dealing with and talking about that stuff, and then using the language that they use when they talk about it is really one of the best ways to write copy, because it's basically they're writing the copy for you, and then you just be authentic. I mean, you don't use a bunch of jargon or slogans or any of that kind of stuff. Like we are definitely in an age of authenticity for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, I love those tips. And so bringing it kind of back to business, I know we've been talking about business stuff this whole time, but bringing it back to your business, what are some of the biggest business lessons that you've learned through, building Rebel of Growth and through your career?
One of the things is, and this is not going to be probably popular with studio owners, but it's you want to first do marketing things that are closest to the money. And when I mean closest to the money, these are people. So you have people that are on your list or members or things like that. And these are the people that are the easiest to kind of sell things to, because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And so when you have something that's worth, that has a lot of value and you want to promote it, then those are the people you kind of go through to first. And that's why I believe that our text messaging campaigns work so well, because they work better than the Facebook ads as far as like getting people to come through the door. And that the reason that is because they already are familiar with our brand. They know us, they like us, they trust us. So doing things that can, get your marketing activity as close to the sale as possible. I think that's one big thing. And then the other one is understanding your audience, like we just talked about. I really like that book that I suggested, the Ask Method, and it taught me a lot. It's a really good book. And then just simplifying things and having systems. Systems is key to everything we do. I create a standard operating procedure, and so that way, it helps me to streamline everything. All I have to do is open up that SOP every time I have a new client, walk through it. It's easy to do. I can hand it off to other people. I don't have to be stuck behind my computer, 16 hours a day. So systematizing thing is another huge one.
Yeah, that's a massive one that I think has been really important for me in my business too. And I feel like still sometimes with systems, things feel a little chaotic and unorganized and all over the place. So it's a reminder that can always improve with my systems as well. But yeah, I think that's definitely an important one. One last question that I'm curious about, because there's lots of studio owners listening, but there's also lots of yoga teachers listening. And obviously this is going to be, a little bit different sort of scale for yoga teachers, but what are some of the key marketing things to remember as a yoga teacher?
So I like that you asked this question because this is something that I need to do a better job of, and that's just personal branding. So I think for a studio teacher, that is all you have is your personal brand, right? Without that, again, it goes back to, do people know you, like you, and trust you? The people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So, really getting your name out there. And I'll drop another name on you. There's a guy named Frank Kern, and if you go to his YouTube channel, he teaches this his own system that he calls intent-based branding. And it all basically starts with a Facebook Live. So he'll go live on Facebook and he does it every day of the week. You don't have to do that. But he starts with a Facebook Live. He'll go on and talk about a subject. And then he'll take that Facebook Live and he'll upload it to YouTube. Same video. He might edit it a little bit. And then he also uploads that to Instagram TV. And then I think from Instagram TV, you can slice that Instagram TV episode up into Instagram stories. And so basically and what he does is in every video, he'll teach something, but then he'll also have call to actions sprinkled throughout each video. And so what that does is it basically, you get all these little assets all over the internet on different channels, and then people see you, start to trust you and like you. And then they also have call to actions within those videos so they can take whatever step that you'd like them to take. And for teachers, they'd have to figure out kind of what that is. Is it, personal training, personal classes, or is it, come see me at this studio, or I'm having a workshop? I don't know exactly what that would be, but I think that's a great way to kind of start your personal branding, because you're getting in all the places where your potential clients are, and they're starting to see you more often, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because I'm a big fan of yoga teachers having a personal brand. And I think that more and more yoga teachers are doing that now, just because it's a lot harder to, if you want to teach full-time type thing, it's a lot harder to just teach at one studio. And so you kind of need to be like your own entity working underneath the studio as opposed to working for that studio. So I think more yoga teachers are kind of catching on to it, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm a big fan of the personal branding side of things, and for yoga teachers to have that brand as their main form of marketing.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is, yes, you need to be doing it, but you need to make it easy on yourself too. And that's why I like the intent-based branding model, because you're basically just creating one piece of content and then repurposing it across a bunch of different channels. So it's basically that process, that systematizing we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. Do you have any other tips or practices or anything that you want to share with anyone listening today before we wrap up?
I think you got me all. I think you've asked all the right questions.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ron. It's been awesome chatting with you. And again, can you just remind listeners where they can go to find out more about you, or to maybe sign up for a call to work with you, or to check out your resources, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So like I said, we're going to be running a challenge in the middle of July. And to sign up for that, you just go to rebelofgrowth.com/challenge. And then if you want to look into working with us, just go to rebelofgrowth.com and click on the see if this will work for your studio button. And from there, you'll take a little questionnaire, and then we'll give you a call.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been really awesome, and I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
All right. I hope that you guys enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Ron Medlin from Rebel of Growth. Don't forget that he is hosting a challenge that starts on Monday, July 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern with a Facebook Live. So it's starting in, just about a month. And the challenge is all about adding new members to your yoga studio. So whether or not you're a yoga teacher working at a yoga studio or a yoga studio owner, I think that this will be a really fun way to just get ideas for how to get more people through the door. Plus, the challenge is totally free. You get daily email, training, and tutorials, Facebook Live training, and you learn how to grow a studio and make more money, which I think as people who work in the yoga space, I think that's what we're looking for. So head on over to rebelofgrowth.com/challenge to sign up for that. And of course, you can find the links and everything that we talked about on this episode on the show notes at www.mbomyoga.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And you can join the private community at Yoga Business Badasses. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can get a hold of me at info@mbomyoga.com. I always love hearing from you guys. And otherwise, I will see you next week. As always, thank you so much for listening, and namaste.